Joining me now is Alex Epstein, founder and CEO of the Center for Industrial Progress. Alex, great to see you. Thank you for being here. So what the heck is going on with Biden's EV push? I mean, the mandates simply aren't working. Why not?
Well, that's true. And just note that, there are different estimates now, but we're getting better and better estimates as to how much we're actually subsidizing EVs. And we're getting estimates of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a car, because it's not just the direct subsidies that we pay through things like the Inflation Reduction Act. There are all sorts of these crazy credits behind the scenes that allow automakers to lose billions and billions of dollars on EVs, but make them up from the sales of gasoline-powered vehicles. So imagine they weren't getting $30,000 plus. And yet, even when they're getting $30,000 plus in subsidies, they are still having trouble winning over Americans. And the reason is just because for most people at this point in time, they're not the most cost-effective option. Right. And unfortunately, Biden's policy is government-dictated green energy. And they think that if we want people to want EVs and we put enough pressure on them, they'll get them. And they're holding a gun to our head partially, but even that's not enough. So I guess they think they just have to totally dictate us or throw us in jail.
Well,
that's probably the only way it's going to really work.
But the bottom line is, however they think they can work it out, their mandates are based on fantasy. I tried to explain that to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg when I had him on in December. That was before the cold snap eliminated the EVs from a lot of people's minds because it didn't work as well in Chicago and places like that. But let me just play that tape from December of last year with Pete Buttigieg. Roll it.
I don't know a lot of people who think that Americans in 2050 are still going to be driving that old technology, that combustion technology that we inherited from the 20th century.
Americans
but the big question is, well, no, you're not going to meet a lot of people who ever go back after they've gone electric. And I think that really tells you something.
Well, what we know now is not only anecdotal information about what happened in Chicago, but this McKinsey report that shows that almost half of EV owners say they're going back to gas-powered cars. So Pete Buttigieg, I'm not just saying it to prove that I was right and he was wrong, but the bottom line is their whole policy is based on the wrong premise that Americans prefer EVs. Even EV owners don't.
I mean, in a sense, it's charitable to say they really believe that Americans prefer it, because if you believe Americans prefer it, why do you need to force them to do it? Right? Why can't they just let the market evolve and not subsidize EVs, which is what I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of EV freedom. So if you can make EVs more cost effective than gasoline powered vehicles, great, I'll buy one. But what we find is just these very common sense things that Buttigieg and these other people ignore, which is they don't have the same range. You have to spend a lot more time charging them. It's just not the same level of convenience.
There's no resale value for these things. There's very little resale value. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it just like consumers are making fairly obvious decisions. Yeah. If consumers want something better than a gasoline car, and they're getting something worse than a gasoline car, and so they're not all that excited about it.
But at the same time, he has to appeal to voters right now, and one way he has to do that is to somehow get gasoline prices down. So he's still pushing this claim for net zero, while at the same time trying to kill fossil fuels. You can't combine the two. They don't go together, do they?
Right, and we just had this incident where Biden is releasing some amount of oil from the strategic gasoline reserve, or gasoline from the strategic gasoline reserve, which is required by law. But they're saying, oh, we're doing this because we care so much about low gasoline prices. We so care about you, the consumer. This is nonsense. Their goal, as you said, is net zero by 2050. The only way to achieve that is to either ban people from using gasoline or make gasoline so incredibly expensive that people will buy EVs or not drive. Because gasoline is so expensive. So they clearly want gasoline to be either much more expensive or illegal, but they know that doesn't work with voters. So they're advocating this obvious contradiction of, we don't want you to use gasoline, but we also want you to have way lower gasoline prices.
And it's not just gas for cars, by the way. It's natural gas for our heating systems, for our ovens. And what is not being done by the federal government is being done by state governments now all over the country. My own building lost their natural gas about 3 months ago and hasn't been turned back on. Alex Epstein, we could talk for hours. Thank you so much. Good to see you. We'll be right back.
Thanks, David.